Late on the night of October 11, 2023, a quiet suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina, became the scene of a disturbing revelation. Andrea Cole, a young mother, dialed 911 at 11:43 p.m. from her home in Pineville. Her voice was tense but controlled as she explained that she'd heard unexplained noises inside her house, even though she'd secured every door and window earlier in the evening. Her husband, Dr. Daniel Cole, was on a night shift at Mecklenburg Memorial Hospital, leaving Andrea alone with their 18-month-old son. She had just put the child to bed when she noticed a faint creaking sound coming from the floor above the basement. At first, she dismissed it as the typical settling sounds of an older house. But moments later, the noises returned, this time accompanied by soft, repetitive tapping coming from the back of the house. It wasn't random. The tapping followed a steady rhythm, enough to jolt Andrea into action. Officers from the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Department arrived swiftly. They found no signs of forced entry, and all access points were still locked from the inside. The house, a single-level ranch-style home with a finished basement, seemed undisturbed until deputies checked below. During the search of the basement, Deputy Latrice Rowe opened a storage closet located behind the stairwell. Inside, crouched behind bins and an old vacuum, was a man. He was visibly frail, with uneven facial hair and clothes that looked like they hadn't seen a washing machine in years. His skin was pale, and he looked disoriented. When asked his name, the man whispered, "Marcus Langston." The name didn't need clarification. Officers recognized it immediately. Marcus Langston had vanished in 2018 during a solo hiking trip in the Blue Ridge Mountains. A widespread search had been launched back then, spanning multiple counties and involving local, state, and federal agencies. His belongings, including his boots and a water bottle, had been found near a trail, but he himself was never recovered. By the end of 2019, Marcus had been declared legally dead. What made this discovery even more shocking was Andrea Cole's connection to him. Marcus had been her husband. She had gone through the legal process to have him declared dead and eventually remarried in 2021. When Andrea was brought downstairs and came face to face with the man, she was visibly shaken. Officers quickly escorted her outside for medical care and emotional support. Dr. Daniel Cole was notified at the hospital and returned home shortly after midnight. Meanwhile, Marcus was taken to Mercy General Hospital for urgent medical and psychological evaluation. Doctors found him underweight but without any visible injuries or recent trauma. Toxicology tests returned negative for drugs or substances. While physically stable, Marcus appeared mentally unstable. His behavior was erratic and he seemed deeply confused, possibly experiencing psychosis. Law enforcement immediately secured the home as a potential crime scene. A forensic sweep turned up no evidence of a break-in, but investigators did find something far more unsettling: food wrappers and empty water bottles in the basement. These items, along with makeshift bedding discovered under the rear deck's crawl space, suggested that Marcus had been living or around the home for a significant amount of time, without anyone's knowledge. Authorities placed Marcus under a 72-hour psychiatric hold in accordance with North Carolina's mental health laws. Detectives Brent Holloway and Tiana Mars took over the investigation. Their focus shifted to key questions. How had Marcus gained access to the home? How long had he been hiding there? And what was his intent? Though his mental state raised concerns, the calculated nature of his hiding spot, complete with supplies, bedding, and awareness of the house layout, suggested a level of planning. This was not the behavior of someone simply lost or confused. When interviewed, Andrea and Daniel Cole recalled minor disturbances over the past few weeks: items out of place, doors left slightly open, and odd sounds during the night. At the time, they had chalked it up to exhaustion or the demands of parenting. No one suspected that someone might be quietly living just beneath their feet. The truth was more unsettling than anything they could have imagined. A man they thought was gone forever had returned, not with celebration, but with mystery and silence. By the morning of October 12, 2023, detectives Brent Holloway and Tiana Marks from the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Department had officially stepped in to lead the investigation. While there was no immediate threat to Andrea or Daniel Cole, the bizarre and unsettling nature of Marcus Langston's sudden reappearance made it clear that this case needed far more than a routine check. Out of an abundance of caution, Andrea and Daniel were advised not to remain at their home. Even though no physical harm had occurred, the mental and emotional impact of the incident was undeniable. Temporary accommodations were arranged by the department, and the house was kept under active surveillance for ongoing evidence collection and forensic work. Meanwhile, at Mercy General Hospital, Marcus was subjected to an initial psychiatric evaluation. A licensed mental health professional, accompanied by law enforcement, conducted the interview. Marcus agreed to be recorded. What followed was a fragmented, cryptic account of his disappearance. According to Marcus, back in October 2018, while hiking alone in the Blue Ridge Mountains, he was approached by two unknown men. He claimed they drugged him and transported him to a covert psychiatric facility somewhere deep in rural Georgia. There, he said, he was isolated, heavily medicated, and kept from contacting anyone. When questioned for specifics, Marcus faltered. He couldn't recall names, exact locations, or how he eventually escaped. His descriptions were vague: cold white walls, metal doors, a narrow bed. There were no physical indications to support such a story, no institutional scars, no muscle deterioration, and a dental check suggested consistent hygiene. Though his thoughts were disorganized, psychiatrists noted he wasn't suffering from acute psychosis. He appeared detached from reality, but still lucid enough to communicate and understand his surroundings. Law enforcement ordered a full medical and psychiatric workup while detectives continued examining the case from all angles. That same day, a preliminary forensic report was handed over to Detectives Holloway and Marks. What it revealed was deeply unsettling. Marcus's fingerprints were not limited to the basement where he was found. His prints turned up in places that suggested prolonged, deliberate presence: on pantry shelves, inside a closet near the front entryway, and even on the railing of the crib where Andrea's baby slept. Detective Marks widened the search for any earlier sightings of Marcus and soon uncovered doorbell camera footage from a neighboring house. The recording, dated September 28th, showed Marcus walking along the tree line at the back of the Coles property. He appeared to be carrying a small bag and was wearing the same gray hoodie he had on when he was discovered. That led detectives back to the crawl space under the rear deck. A second search revealed a makeshift campsite, old blankets, foam padding, and aged tarp. They also found snack wrappers, plastic water bottles, and a small flashlight. Every item pointed to recent activity. Receipts located in Marcus's belongings showed purchases at a discount store just a few weeks prior, aligning with the discovery dates. There was still no evidence of forced entry, but investigators now believed Marcus may have entered through unlocked doors or open windows. Andrea admitted she occasionally left the back door ajar when letting the dog out, a habit she hadn't thought twice about until now. More fingerprints surfaced on the basement refrigerator handle, the bathroom mirror, and the knob leading to the garage. These prints painted a disturbing picture. Marcus had been navigating parts of the home unnoticed for weeks, possibly longer. Though he never confronted the family directly, he was close enough to witness their daily lives up close. Adding to the concern, Daniel recalled a strange incident involving his work laptop. In late September, he discovered it had been accessed overnight. He assumed it was an automatic update or system error, but given the current context, that theory was being reevaluated. The evidence began to tell a much different story than Marcus's tale of abduction and escape. It wasn't the narrative of a victim fleeing captivity. It looked more like someone who had carefully plotted a return and secretly infiltrated a former life. With these revelations, Holloway and Marks reclassified the case. What started as a welfare check had escalated into a potential case of stalking and unlawful entry. And just when they thought things couldn't get more bizarre, another twist emerged. Facial recognition searches returned a match. Though Marcus's North Carolina driver's license had expired in 2019 and was never renewed, he had resurfaced, briefly. A traffic citation was issued to him under the same name in Fulton County, Georgia in June 2020. Where he had been in the years between and what exactly he'd been planning remained a mystery, but it was clear the case was only beginning to unfold. A traffic citation issued in Georgia turned out to be the thread that unraveled a deeply unsettling mystery. The ticket was written out to a man named Marcel Rose. The name didn't raise red flags at first until investigators saw the photo. The resemblance to Marcus Langston was unmistakable. That lead shifted the investigation south. Under the alias Marcel Rhodes, a number of rental records and property listings were uncovered, including a neglected storage unit in Augusta, Georgia. The unit hadn't been accessed in nearly a year and was already marked for auction due to unpaid fees. With coordination from the Richmond County authorities, Mecklenburg County detectives secured a warrant and opened the unit. Inside, they found the past Marcus had left behind. Boxes of personal effects confirmed the identity. A 2004 high school yearbook from North Carolina, medical records from Charlotte-based clinics, and one box marked Charlotte sealed the connection. Inside that box were 3 spiral notebooks, each dense with handwritten entries dated from 2017 to 2020. The contents ranged from journal reflections to more erratic manifesto-like thoughts. In one entry from December 2017, Marcus had written, "She'll be better off without me. Let them think I died." That line, along with recurring notes about paranoia, money problems, and deteriorating mental health, painted a different picture of his 2018 disappearance. The hike that led to his presumed death, likely staged. His belongings left behind on the trail, intentionally planted. Detectives now believed Marcus hadn't been taken or lost. He had orchestrated his own vanishing. Under the Marcel Rhodes name, financial records revealed consistent cash transactions, payments for rent, utilities, and supplies from hardware and electronic stores. The receipts aligned with items later discovered beneath the Cole's rear deck, including insulation, blankets, and even food wrappers. It was now evident that Marcus had been slowly and methodically preparing to reinsert himself into Andrea Cole's life. Digital evidence added another layer of concern. After Daniel Cole reported suspicious activity on his work laptop, a forensic analysis was ordered. Investigators discovered that the device had been remotely accessed at 3:07 a.m. on October 1st using Daniel's own credentials. The login occurred via the home's Wi-Fi network while Daniel was asleep. No files had been stolen or altered, but the intrusion itself confirmed that Marcus had not only been inside the house, but had also used Daniel's devices without detection. Then came an even more personal discovery. Andrea Cole recalled something strange from the day before Marcus was found. While organizing a drawer in her bedroom, she stumbled upon her original wedding ring, the one she had lost back in 2019 after Marcus's disappearance. The ring was placed on top of her vanity, as if someone had set it there intentionally. Andrea hadn't seen it in years. The symbolism was chilling. Detectives dusted the ring for prints. None were found, but its sudden reappearance spoke volumes. Marcus had entered living spaces without anyone noticing, leaving behind emotional markers instead of overt threats. The behavior wasn't just trespassing, it bordered on psychological warfare. From this point forward, investigators began treating the case as felony stalking. On October 23rd, Andrea Cole was formally interviewed at the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Department. Detectives Holloway and Marks conducted the session in a recorded environment. Andrea was cooperative, though clearly shaken. She described feelings of fear, disbelief, and ultimately anger. She firmly stated she had not seen or spoken to Marcus since the day he vanished in 2018. Her statements were supported by records. No emails, calls, or texts indicated any contact after his disappearance. Law enforcement determined Andrea was not complicit in Marcus's return and had genuinely believed him to be dead. But Marcus had been watching, waiting. Further forensic work on October 19th uncovered something deeply disturbing. A small audio recording device hidden behind an air vent in the Coles family's living room. Its battery was still functioning. This wasn't a man seeking reconciliation. It was someone methodically reinserting himself into a life that had moved on without him, uninvited and undetected. And now, with evidence mounting, investigators had a clearer picture of what they were really dealing with. Not a lost soul, but a man who never truly left. What began as a puzzling case of trespassing soon escalated into something far more invasive. During a second sweep of the Cole residence, law enforcement uncovered a small recording device hidden behind an air vent in the living room. It was compact, no larger than a lighter, with a basic microphone and weak battery, but its presence was disturbing. Two more units were discovered soon after. One was tucked discreetly behind a hallway bookshelf, the other wedged beneath a cushion in the home office. All three devices were traced to a budget electronics store chain in Georgia. Receipts found in the Augusta storage unit linked to Marcus Langston's assumed identity, Marcel Rhodes, showed he had purchased that same model in the same quantity just weeks earlier in August 2023. These findings confirmed Marcus had been monitoring activity inside the home long before his presence was known, likely for 6 to 8 weeks. The digital forensics team soon found even more troubling signs. Andrea Cole's phone logs revealed a pattern of unusual Bluetooth activity during early morning hours. Between mid-September and early October, several unexplained pairings had occurred, all matching the signature of a wireless receiver or tracking device. Investigators theorized that Marcus had remotely synced one of his surveillance tools to Andrea's phone, possibly to track her movements or listen in on audio. Attention then turned to the electrical system in the house. Daniel Cole recalled that the garage motion lights had been flickering on and off randomly through September. He had dismissed it as faulty wiring or a raccoon. But when technicians inspected the breaker panel, they noticed fresh scratches and signs of tampering. It wasn't random. Someone had physically interfered with the system, likely Marcus, either to manipulate lighting patterns or to monitor daily routines. The most alarming discovery, however, came from outside the house. Under Daniel's car, officers found a GPS tracking unit encased in a small magnetic housing. The device had been recording Daniel's locations for weeks, confirming his daily routines, commutes to work, trips to the grocery store, workouts at the gym. The pattern was methodical, consistent, and detailed. Detectives followed up on the electronics purchases made under Marcus's alias. Staff at the store in Augusta recalled a man who matched his description, asking technical questions about wireless range and battery longevity. Surveillance footage from that store, currently under review, was expected to further link Marcus to the purchases and reinforce the investigative timeline. For Daniel Cole, who had initially found the situation hard to believe, the accumulation of evidence changed everything. He now viewed the incident as a targeted intrusion. Under Andrea's urging, the couple installed new security protocols and relocated to a secure location with the help of local authorities. As the picture came into focus, the nature of the case shifted dramatically. What began as a trespassing and stalking investigation was now formally reclassified as a criminal surveillance operation. Detective Marks reached out to federal officials for assistance, citing potential violations of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 2511, unauthorized interception of communications. By November 2023, the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office filed a series of felony charges against Marcus Langston. These included felony stalking, unlawful surveillance, second-degree burglary, and identity fraud. With evidence gathered by Detectives Holloway and Marks, the case against Marcus was well substantiated. The legal process proceeded with a mandatory psychological evaluation. 2 independent forensic psychiatrists assessed Marcus and found him coherent though emotionally unstable. In interviews, he claimed his actions were driven by desperation, not hostility. He insisted that disappearing had been his way of resetting his life and that returning to Andrea's home wasn't about revenge, but reclaiming unfinished business. His public defender, Darren Vick, introduced a diminished capacity defense, pointing to a mental health breakdown Marcus had experienced back in 2017 when his small marketing firm went under. While medical documentation showed he had received short-term care for anxiety and depression, there was no history of long-term medication or hospitalization. Still, the prosecution had a different angle. Their case didn't rest on whether Marcus was troubled, it hinged on intent. The DA's office argued that Marcus had gone far beyond emotional distress. He had deliberately staged his disappearance, assumed a false identity, tracked and monitored the Coles' private lives, and placed himself in positions to escalate that control. This wasn't just a return from the dead. It was the reemergence of a man who refused to stay gone and who might not have stopped if he hadn't been caught. Daniel Cole later expressed regret for not taking Andrea's early concerns more seriously. Throughout the trial, Marcus Langston remained mostly expressionless, rarely interacting with his attorney, Darren Vick. When Andrea testified, Marcus reacted only by occasionally shaking his head, never speaking, never objecting. The defense argued that Marcus had suffered a psychological decline following personal and professional losses in 2017. They claimed his fragile mental state contributed to obsessive behavior and a warped perception of his past relationships. However, psychiatric assessments presented during the trial, while noting compulsive tendencies and emotional fixation, confirmed that Marcus was mentally fit to stand trial. The jury was asked to consider his mental condition during deliberations, but was not given instructions for an insanity defense. Closing arguments wrapped on May 20th. Prosecutors emphasized that Marcus's actions were calculated and sustained over time, regardless of his emotional instability. The defense countered with a request for compassion, pointing to Marcus's isolation and untreated psychological issues. Less than 6 hours later, the jury reached its decision. Marcus Langston was convicted on all charges: felony stalking, second-degree burglary, identity theft, unlawful surveillance, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Judge Howard Granger sentenced him to 32 years in state prison, with no eligibility for parole for the first 20. For Andrea and Daniel, the verdict brought partial relief. In her written impact statement, Andrea described the trial as the end of a long nightmare, though emotional scars remained. The couple moved out of their Pineville home soon after, relocating to Greensboro and changing their names through a legal process. Some neighbors knew the house's past, others did not. As one local said in a televised segment, "It felt like something out of a thriller, but it happened right here, all because a man disappeared."